Viewers, welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything to do with personal injuries and personal injury law. We talk about cases, legislation, and what's happening in the world of personal injuries. My name's Tony Carbone, personal injury lawyer of over 25 years experience. With me, I've got one of the youngest personal injury law partners going around, Nuncio Tartaya. Good evening, Nuncio.
Tony, Alice, viewers, good evening.
And a very young and up-and-coming superstar in the world of personal injuers, Alice O'Kane. Good evening, Alice.
Tony, Nuncio, viewers.
Tony, before we get into it, what's in the news?
Well, Nuncio, before we do that, we're going to be doing this, viewers are going to be doing part 2 of the interview with Dr. Callis at his rooms at the Avenue in Windsor. But in the news, Nuncio, we've got this story about, by Lateline, talking about the legislation that's been passed in Queensland to prevent under 18-year-olds from having cosmetic aesthetic type surgery. Now, this is of interest because it's the only jurisdiction in Australia where under 18-year-olds can't have this surgery without the parents' permission. But we'll be going to this later on in the show because just right now, viewers, without further ado, we want to go back to Dr. Callis's rooms and do the second part of the interview that we did last week. So we'll do that now. Dr. Callis, in Queensland, the legislation prohibits teenagers from having plastic surgery. Can you tell us your thoughts on this?
Yes, well, I understand that the Queensland government has produced legislation to prevent teenagers from having plastic, specifically aesthetic surgery. And I hope this legislation doesn't come to Victoria because I strongly believe that the decision to have plastic surgery is between the patient and the doctor. Indeed, when I think about young people that I've operated on in the past, a few come to mind. One was a little boy of 7 who was teased in the playground because of his prominent ears. And he was really upset to go to school. And he was very keen to have surgery. And he understood that it was difficult for him coming into a little operating theatre and having to have an anaesthetic and having to wear a bandage. But he embraced this willingly because he wanted to feel normal about himself. Plastic surgeons often see themselves as psychiatrists with a knife, that we're operating not just on the body but on the soul.
Doctor, what proportion of your surgeries are considered elective as opposed to reconstructive surgeries?
Well, it's very hard to draw the line and to make a distinction because in the eye of every patient, the surgery is necessary. No one is going to subject themselves to an operation and all the recovery and risk of complications for some trivial reason. For them, they've usually worried about it for many years, and it's usually a very specific problem, such as a very heavy bust, which is giving them neck ache and backache and shoulder pains. They have to wear loose clothes to conceal their deformity as they see it. And for them to be able to have a normal bust means they can go ahead and lead a normal life.
But on the issue of implants, there's been a lot of problems of late in the media. Can you see that being a problem with Australian products?
Well, Tony, most of the implants that we use in Australia are actually made in the United States or Europe, and they're carefully regulated by our Therapeutic Goods Authority, the TGA. But we have had a case recently, you're right, about which related to a French manufacturer called PIP Implants or PIP. And they produced an implant which passed all the regulations in Australia. It was a silicone implant. And then, unbeknownst to anyone, they changed the silicone from a medical grade to an industrial grade silicone. And what this meant was that these implants were deteriorating within 2 or 3 years, instead of lasting, say, from 10 to 20 years. And the problem was more than that. When they did deteriorate, the silicone was much more prone to spread through the body, to the lymph glands and other parts of the body.
Complications from that, doctor?
Well, often the patient won't know the implant's leaking until she notices a lump under her arm. The strong recommendation is that they should have an MRI examination. And I was pleased to see that recently in Australia that Medicare has made an item number available specifically for women who have or believe they have PIP implants to have an MRI examination.
Doctor, what sort of ongoing training do you have as a fellow of the Royal Australian College of Surgeons?
Well, Tony, in common with all surgeons in Australia, plastic surgeons have to partake in CPD, which stands for Continued Professional Development. And that means we have to accrue each year a certain number of points by going to meetings, by doing research, by publishing papers, and every surgeon in Australia needs to undergo the CPD, which is another point of difference between specialist surgeons and people who are not surgeons.
Alice, what did you take out of that?
Look, Tony, Professor Kalis talked about a lot of different issues in his video, in his interview, and in particular what really struck me was this ongoing problems they've had with the PIP or the PIP implants, particularly for breast augmentations. Dr. Kalis said to us that there was a change in the formula somewhere along the way, and they were using industrial silicone which could leak out into the rest of your body. And the real tragedy is that the women didn't know there was an issue with these implants until they had a lump under their arm. And not only have they really been honing in on this, but they've also created a Medicare item to deal with the cost of having an MRI to work out whether or not you have these PIP implants.
Nuncio, with this, there's a class action on foot at the moment involving these breast implants.
Yeah, look, it sort of comes into like a sort of product liability scheme because as I said, it's not regarding the actual surgery itself, but the actual product that's used in the surgery. So it brings in another realm of law there, and it could, open the floodgates if something like that was proven. So it's very interesting, Tony.
And he talks a lot about ongoing training and CPD points, Alice.
That's right. Not dissimilar to lawyers, Tony. Dr. Kalis told us that professional plastic and reconstructive surgeons have to undergo what's called CPD, or continuing professional development, which includes things like attending meetings or conferences, writing papers or doing research. And these sorts of things keep up your skills in the area. So much like doing a lot of surgeries will make you more competent as a surgeon, attending these meetings and things also increases your knowledge base and keeps you up to date with the developments in the field, which is very important.
Nuncio, my concern is this. There's this raging debate between the cosmetic surgeons and plastic surgeons, but I think it's a bigger issue than that. People are going overseas to get the surgeries done cheap.
Yeah.
That's the real issue, isn't it?
Oh, that's one of the issues because, look, it's an expensive process having any type of surgery, and people are looking to save $1. But the problem is that's causing even more ramifications and almost costs them more because of the post-operative care.
When they come in and if there's a problem.
Yeah, and look, just touching on the CPD points, look, it's great to have the training, and look, we have to do it also, but there's no, I suppose, compulsory attendance to do certain areas.
That's
and,
right.
I don't think it's as, I suppose, stringent as it should, because you're dealing with people's bodies, and I think it needs to be looked at anyway.
Alice, a lot of these procedures aren't covered by Medicare or healthcare.
That's right, Tony. It's what we call elective surgery, or surgery that the patient chooses to have for a non-medical reason. And this also ties into this big debate about cosmetic v plastic surgery and when do you need it. And I particularly think it's interesting that in Queensland, if you're under 18, you can't have plastic surgery without permission, but that plays into accidents and things as well. It's an interesting topic.
We're going to have to go to a sponsors break, viewers, so please stay tuned. After the break, we'll go back to Dr. Kallis's rooms again. Thank you.